As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. You've probably heard me and others like me talk about how grown-up narcissistic individuals actually carry around a broken inner child that so heavily influences the way that they manage their relationships. No doubt if you've been involved with a narcissist in your personal life or workplace, etc., you've experienced that childishness. And it's so important for you to understand that narcissists are going to continue being the way they are until they can come to terms with that inner broken child. Now, I want to give you a very simple illustration to show you some of the beginnings of how that brokenness can exist on the inside of a young person, and then we're going to build on that. The illustration is you have a father with 3 children. He comes home at the end of the day and finds an item inside the home that has a certain value to it, and it's broken. Brings the 3 children in. One of them indeed is guilty of having broken that item. The father asks the question, who did this? Child number 1 says, I didn't do it. Child number 2 says, well, I didn't do it. Child number 3, who's the guilty party, says, I didn't do it. And the case goes unresolved. Now, that child who said, I didn't do it, when in fact that was a lie, had all sorts of things on the inside of his mind. See, that little child was thinking, well, I've heard the phrase, honesty is the best policy. Not today. Honesty is not always going to be the best policy in my home. Or that little child is thinking, well, if I'm going to be exposed for having made this mistake, there's a lot of big trouble ahead of me. Or that child is thinking, I've had more than my share or my quota of shame and blame and grief, and I don't want to add to that today. Or the child may be thinking to himself, okay, I know I'm not supposed to lie, but today's going to be an exception. Now, that's a very simple illustration. You may have had some of those scenarios when you were growing up, but it kind of gives you an idea of what can happen to the inside of a child who thinks being open, being honest, being self-revealing is not going to work out very well for me. And there are many individuals who can look back and say, oh, I had those experiences only of a much more severe or different kind of nature than that. Children can grow up to become adults and they can develop all sorts of skills and they can have all sorts of achievements, but a high percentage of them do not necessarily learn how to come to terms with that broken inner child. And the more of that broken inner child that remains on the inside of those adults, then the more inclined they're going to be toward narcissism. Now, what does it mean for an adult narcissistic person to be carrying that broken inner child? How can we know and understand that indeed is the case? And I've got 8 illustrators real quickly I'm going to run through. First, that person learned that straightforward, plain, constructive communication isn't going to be strongly developed or never was strongly developed. Second, they have a real strong sense of vigilance, and they learned that very early on. In other words, am I going to be punished? Am I going to be rewarded? And am I going to be shunned? Am I going to be the object of anger? And that's something that's deep on the inside of their psyche. Third, they ask, well, who's trustworthy in my life? And who can I really open up to? That's a pretty small number. Fourth, that child may think, well, I'm not sure I know how to handle guilt or fear. They have a lack of what I call emotional competence that they have not come to terms with. Number 5, they're very afraid of the authorities' anger. It's like, I know it's coming and it's going to be ugly, or they assume that anyway. Number 6, they assume that flaws or just being a disappointment is going to lead to certain rejection. And then number 7, they're unable to ask for guidance. Hey, look, I don't really know what's going on here. Or yes, I did make that blunder. Or yes, I did break that item. Let's talk. The people that have that inner broken child, like, no, they never did learn to do that. That's not too safe. And then number 8, they develop a sense of uncertainty about their own personal worth and adequacy. Now, like I say, each child at some level carries a certain amount of brokenness, but that brokenness can lead toward narcissism in direct proportion to various issues being a part of that individual's historical experience. For example, you can know that you're probably going to be carrying that inner broken child when there's a strong emphasis on anger and judgment inside the home, particularly in the presence of differences. That brokenness is going to be perpetuated when there's a clear presence of conditional acceptance only. In addition, there's neglect in exploring that child's reasoning or their motivation for doing whatever it is they're doing. In other words, there's not that calm discussion during that person's history that says, we need to talk. Let's figure out what's happening here. In addition, one of the things that contributes to brokenness is the prominence of an unwavering agenda. I've spoken with so many adults who can look back and say, well, I knew that there was this list of things I had to be and think and say and do and opinions that I had to have. And if I ever got off that agenda, it was curtains for me. That being said, many times the brokenness is in direct proportion or lies in direct proportion to the emphasis upon conformity. Or there's a lack of nurturance for just simply being who you are. And you can see that there are a multitude of these ingredients that add to and then perpetuate the brokenness that in the adult years lead toward the increase of narcissistic characteristics. The way you see that is those adults who have that brokenness that they've never come to terms with think to themselves, and these are the narcissistic characteristics, I have to stay in tight control. And narcissism is all about maintaining control. And in addition, it's like there's a lot of self-protection. Narcissists are known for having high levels of defensiveness, and it's always about me. I've got to figure out, what's this going to mean to me? And they don't really learn to think about other individuals out there. When you have that inner broken child that you carry in the adult years, it leads to an inability to know how to monitor personal emotions. They run away with that individual at the drop of a hat, and they not only don't know how to manage their emotions, but they don't know how to manage your emotions, which means that they have developed or that they've underdeveloped a sense of empathy. And in addition, there's a lot of demands that they bring to the equation. I demand that you are in charge of filling my emptiness, which sets up manipulation and exploitation. So you can see when you're dealing with a narcissistic individual as an adult who just keeps going back to those childish and those dysregulated kinds of responses to people, they've never really learned to grow out of it. In order to get past that broken inner child, there are certain ingredients that a person has to learn how to give priority to. Ingredients, first of all, like awareness. In other words, there has to be an honest assessment of who you are and what you do, pluses and minuses, which then leads also to the ingredient of honesty. Not only do you have to have an awareness, but you have to be honest about what it means. Pluses and minuses all together. In order to break through your broken inner child and move beyond, you have to have a certain amount of humility. I understand that not everything about me and my past is ideal. I get it, and I'll talk about it in whatever way I need to. You want to have a sense of intentionality. I really do want to be a better person, and here's what it would look like. And you take your own personal initiatives. It's not something that you do because it's a duty. You have to have a sense of perseverance, knowing that sometimes old habits die hard, so it's going to take some time to develop those new and cleaner habits. You have to have an ongoing sense of accountability, and you have to be willing to seek out guidance if that's necessary or educate yourself. Now, I want to ask you the question, do those ingredients sound like something that narcissist embraces? And you see, the problem is, the deeper you go into your narcissism, and you talk about awareness and honesty and humility and intentionality and perseverance, etc., it's like, nah, I don't need that kind of stuff. They don't want to go into that space. And as a result, they wind up remaining with that broken inner child in charge of their emotional disposition. Now, as a therapist, one of the things that I would want to do is I would want individuals to examine some of the influences in their life. And this is something I'm hoping you are going to have an ongoing willingness to do. For example, I would ask, what are some of the patterns that were established in your early years that you now want to improve upon? That it didn't work well for you back then, and it's certainly not working well for you now. What was going on in your life at that particular time? Whether it was in your immediate family, or it may have been there was something going on inside of your social milieu, or you may have had systems that you were exposed to, whether it's the extended family or your school or youth organizations you may have been in, sports, or you may have had no influences at all out there. You're just kind of left adrift. What secrets did you learn how to hold on to? And then a very interesting question I would like to ask individuals is, what would that wounded child from way back when say to your adult self today of an instructive nature? It is possible to get beyond the impact of what happens to that wounded child, but narcissists, they tend not to be able to do that. By the way, in that opening illustration where the one boy said, "I didn't do it," that was me. And one of the things I had to come to terms with is I had to examine, why would I deny some of my flaws and what was going on inside? And I'm a living testimony to say you can break through, you can make your adjustments, and you can be in an ongoing growth trajectory. Narcissists, though, are so committed to the patterns that didn't really work well as a child, and they hold on to them. They don't really work well as an adult, but it's like, I'm familiar with it. That's what I know. That's what I do. I'm hoping you and I can say, I see it for what it is. And as we see it for what it is, we can think, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the rest of my life having an awareness and then being in that growth mode. I like being that person. And when you do so, then that allows you to be at a place that the narcissist never is able to join you at. I hope videos such as this can give you some good things to think about, and I hope that you can examine yourself as you have an ongoing awareness of what's happening inside that narcissistic person. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do so, and we'll keep more videos coming your direction. It may be that you would find that therapy is something that would be helpful for you. And you know that I've been sponsored for years now by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below that will take you to their website. If you go through our link, you'll get a 10% discount on your first month. Online therapy has become something ever since COVID that's very popular, and it's very effective, and it's cost effective. Please seek the therapy that you would, if that's something you need, that could definitely help you move into the much better direction. Likewise, I have my therapeutic courses. It's like signing up for an online class. It's quite extensive, and each course has multiple videos and written documents as well as guided questions, and it walks you through various kinds of patterns. We have the course Ready, Set, Connect about how to make good connections with others. This is me establishing your boundaries, free to be finding yourself despite those controllers. We also have my webinars that have already been presented, and you can still go back and they're in our website, and you can pick up on those, as well as my podcast, my books, and plenty of other resources. Lots of articles there on the website, etc. Please know that we all have something in our personal history that says, there's a brokenness here. Healthy individuals can look at that, they can be honest about it, and they can say, I know there's a better way of life. I'm committed toward that happening. And it starts with that awareness and that honesty. Narcissists is like, nah, I don't need to do that. And they just keep doing the same thing over and over and creating the same problems over and over. As you're aware of that, I'm hoping you can say, I'm not going to mix and mingle with individuals who have that kind of dysfunction that guides them. I want to be a person of steadiness, and specifically, I want to continue to moving further and further into the direction of personal peace.